Hey, welcome to the CMO Whisper Show. I'm your host, Steve Olensky. Part marketing practitioner, part ad agency veteran, part journalist. I was a writer for Forbes for 10 years. I've had so many insightful conversations over the years with business leaders, to athletes, to celebrities, to, of course, CMOs. The only difference now is instead of sharing those insights through written form, I'm doing it this way. My guest today is Tim McDermott. Tim is the president of the Philadelphia Union and Union Sports and Entertainment and oversees all club business operations. Since joining the union in 2016, his efforts have been focused on increasing the brand strength, fan base, and revenue opportunities, as well as a continued commitment to growing soccer and making a positive impact on the community. Under his oversight, the union reached many milestones ahead of the current season, including the highest partnership revenues and largest season ticket base of all time, historical highs in television ratings, social media engagement, and earned media coverage. In his past, Tim has served as CMO of the Philadelphia 76ers of the NBA, the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFL, and the Washington Capitals of the NHL. And we're going to find out why no Major League Baseball, but we'll get to that. During his time at the Eagles, they were recognized by Forbes as the fastest growing brand in sports. In 2011, Tim was named to the 40 Under 40 by Philadelphia Business Journal. In 2014, he received the CMO Club Programmatic Marketing Award. His brother, Sean, finally is the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. Tim McDermott, my brother, my friend, how are you?
Fantastic, Steve. Great to see you. Been too long. Good to see you.
It's been too long. For those who really won't care, but I'm going to say it anyway, Tim. We've tried this multiple times. We recorded an episode, but got deleted somehow. So we're trying again.
Take two.
Exactly.
Oh, good.
So assuming everything's rocking and rolling, and it is, we're going to dive right in. So what I want to do is come at this kind of multi-pronged for the listeners, meaning come at it from your previous CMO lens and now your current biz ops kind of role and just kind of meld the two together, if that sounds cool to you.
Sure.
So I think the first place that I'm very interested in, knowing your background as well as you do, but I want others to know that having been now in both roles, the CMO role now and president as long as you have, what are some of the biggest differences between the two?
Good question. I mean, look, on some level, it's a statement of the obvious. The scope of when you're managing an entire business, right, than just a portion of the business. Obviously, the scope is much bigger. But what I would say, you have a much deeper appreciation for everything in the company you're responsible for. You have some level of responsibility for it. So if in our ticketing department, if we've got a young, 23-year-old salesperson who isn't, maybe meeting expectations, my answer can't simply be, well, that's, because of some 23-year-old salesperson that we didn't meet goals, right? So it's got to be that I dive in and appropriately, when it's appropriate, and try to make sure that the people are right, the processes are right, the vision is clear, people understand what the goals are. Because at the end of the day, I have owners that will come to me and say, how are we doing in X, or why didn't we do X and Y? And I need to be, have a really strong understanding of the entirety of the business. And then, like I said, I have a sense of responsibility that every piece of that business, I need to be understanding, knowledgeable of, and responsible for. And so it's just the breadth of it, I think, is different than just being a CMO. I think the other piece is numbers, meaning, we have semi-annual board meetings. These are very, intense, long, 8-hour meetings. A lot of the owners in our ownership group, I think we have about 12 or so owners that are, they come from a PE background, a VC, investment management, finance background. And so they know numbers. And that is really the new norm, I'd say, in the world of sports. A lot of the new ownership groups now are just that, right? They are groups. They're not just single person ownership. And a lot of them have a finance background. And so it's really important that you understand the numbers, understand cash flow, understand, pro formas, et cetera, be able to speak, their language, understand cap tables and, how do you raise capital? How do you raise, equity, debt, et cetera. And so I think that is a pretty significant, change than simply being in the marketing side.
Yeah.
I remember years ago when I was a chief marketing officer at one of the companies, one of the teams you mentioned, I actually went to my president at the time and I said, where do you spend more of your time? Where do you kind of index to, the marketing side or revenue side? And he said revenue. And I understand, right? At the end of the day, like there's a reason, right? The businesses are about, can you generate enough revenue? Can it generate enough profit? Do you have capital calls? How are you raising capital? What is the valuation of the company, et cetera? So I can appreciate why that person said that to me, and I think there's some level of truth to that. So yeah, I think those are some of the the big differences. I'll also say one of the things, the observations that I have, and my brother and I kind of talk about this, is the mood in the room. The mood in the office that's on me. So if I don't like what I see, what I hear, what I feel, I have to first look in the mirror and say, when I walk into the office, how am I carrying myself? What's the mood that I reflect? Am I positive? Am I negative? Am I downtrodden? Am I upbeat? Am I hopeful? So whatever I am reflecting, I also have to take responsibility for. I might be portraying something and I may not like what I'm feeling. Well, it's on me. I need to change that mood, that in the office, that culture in the office. So if we come out of a bad season, maybe a season where we don't live up to expectations, maybe people naturally are getting more tense or nervous, or they're less hopeful. And I need to kind of say, hey, no, here's the strategy, here's the plan, here's how we do create a sense of hope, here's how we get back to where we want to get to. So just understanding that beat, that feel in the office is also a big piece of what I think a president needs to bring to the table.
I'm so glad you went there, because I don't know if a lot of leaders, and I'm not lumping, I'm just thinking out loud, and I talk to leaders all the time. I get the feeling that, some either aren't aware their responsibility to use that word of literally how you present yourself, right? No matter what's going on. Some may say it's not fair. Like, if you're having something going on in your world, you have to table that, because when you walk into a room, they're going to feed right off of you, right? And that added responsibility. I don't know if a lot of leaders are cognizant of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. Then you are right. If you're having stuff and you're, in whatever department A, you can't let that affect department B, or if you're having stuff even at your home, in your home life, you got to put that to the side. And yeah, there's a maturity aspect that comes with that. I think the other piece that I've always realized around being a team president, there are different types of presidents, different types of CEOs. So understanding who you are is important. In other words, I think I've been around people who are very strategic, and that's kind of their CEO is to be a strategist. Then I've been around others who are very operational. I've been around others who are very culture centric, and that's what they're all about. So I think understanding like what type of president, what type of CEO are you is important. And so where to lean in, and also where you might be like, hey, maybe I'm really heavy in strategy, and therefore maybe certain times people that are more strategic might be less focused on people, and they need to be aware of that to say, yeah, I'm really good at the strategy. I love it. I'm good at it, but I can't just go, into my office and sit there all day and not interact with people. And I got to be aware of that. And so kind of understanding just a little bit more self-awareness of like, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And knowing how to lean in certain areas has been important.
Well, you were just saying that the different types of CEOs I was thinking about, and this, I'm preaching to the choir here for sure. There's different types of CMOs. And two of the biggest distinctions, at least that I'm seeing in the marketplace now, when it comes to CMOs, are brand versus performance. And aside from my personal going, why do you have to pick between the two? But it was just interesting to hear you say the same applies to CEOs. There's different types of CEOs as well.
Yeah, totally.
And presidents, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting. It really is interesting. Okay, I want to take you back. I can't believe it's been 8 years, by the way, since you've been there. I don't know if it seems like it's gone fast or not to you, but 2016, right? And for those not familiar, I'm from Philly. So I'm born and raised. I know this area as well as anybody, as well as you do. And prior to the union, soccer was not really exactly like an afterthought. There had been other, for those not familiar, there had been other soccer teams in the city, right, as you know, over the years. But coming into this city with 4 established professional franchises, which we know what they are, Take us back to those challenges of going, oh my God, I'm going up against the Eagles, Sixers, Flyers, Philly.
No, it's you're 100% right. Look, Philadelphia has historically been known as a 4-for-4 town. And, our thought, our goal, our strategy our vision is to make it a 5-for-5 town. And what you'll see is in the MLS, in the sport of soccer, the cities, or the teams, I should say, that are in what I'll call secondary cities where there's less sports competition, they crush it. I mean, they just absolutely crush it, right? So whether you're in the Cincinnati's, the St. Louis's now, the Austins, right, Portland's, I mean, they're hitting grand slams. They're doing awesome. The challenge for us is in these larger markets where there's a lot of sports competition is how do you really break through? And the civic pride of a city might already be captured by, in our case, the Phillies, the Flyers, the Sixers, the Eagles. So it is a tough putt for sure. And, it requires a little bit of, thinking a little bit differently to kind of separate your brand, to make it, unique and interesting, to do things a little bit different, to get yourselves on the map, so to speak. And really, what I say all the time is if you work in the NFL and you've got a press conference at 2:00, you can send out an email and you're going to have 20 people show up. We're going to call 20 people to get 6 or 7 to show up. Right. So it's different from that perspective. And you're going to work. You are going to grind. And you're going to work. And if you love that building brick by brick by brick, if you've got that entrepreneurial spirit, if you've got that, I'm ready to take on the big boys type mentality. Working in a place like the MLS, working in the upstart, working in the challenger brand is awesome, right? It's awesome. There's other people though that are better fit for the more established. And that's not one's right or one's wrong. It's just some people love that I'm the upstart, I'm the challenger. I want to build it brick by brick. And then other people are better in a situation where it's already been built. The processes are all there. The people are all there. And you're, more managing, you're a steward of what's already there. So it's just different. But yeah, it's been a ton of my staff. I'd put them up against anybody in all the leagues. And I've worked in pretty much every league besides baseball, like you said. So, we pride ourselves in putting in the right people, training them up. A lot of what we do is we bring in people who are probably a little bit younger, a little bit more junior in the career, provide them amazing training and give them responsibility earlier on in their career than they might get at another place. And so that's worked out really well for us. And then at the end of the day, Steve, you still got to have a good product, and when I say good product, I mean, winning is still important. It does matter in all sports. It really does matter. And, we're no different. We want to put out a good product. We've had a really good, run for 7 years or so, not so much this past year, but other than that, we've had a really good run. And when you do get to that point, you do start to pop, you do start to break through, but you got to make sure that we spend a lot of time on earned media, pitching stories, getting out there and getting ourselves into, the media landscape and trying to create some sort of shared equity with some of the other sports teams, trying to do, a lot of collabs with different teams and different celebs, to bring up our, our kind of credibility. We're really good around the soccer world, like our fan base. If you think of segments, we're really good amongst the soccer enthusiast. What we now got to get to kind of grow our fan base is that sports fan. That sports fan that does root for the Flyers, the Sixers, Eagles, Phillies, and how do we get them? And is that just a matter of time, or is there a way to accelerate that?
Would that include, and I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway, you have the team itself, but those 4 teams you just mentioned, they all have at least 2 or 3 individual players that make it more marketable.
Yep. No, so you're hitting on probably one of the biggest questions I think that we have as the union and as the league is, what are those steps to growth? So like I said earlier, what we see is so far, we're all pretty good at filling our stadiums. For the most part, our stadiums are at, near capacity or at capacity across the entire MLS. What we've got to figure out now is how we create more fans and how we create more viewership. And that's really, I think viewership is a byproduct of having more fans, right? So the more you have, the more eyeballs either coming to your stadium or watching you on TV. So, we've made some real good strides in that. I think we have a good partner in Apple that is, trying to help us with that TV side. But fundamentally, that's the big question for us is what does it look like to grow? And is it just about stars? And and what are the other components to fan growth? So obviously we have Messi came into the league, and certainly a big jump start for the league, a lot of excitement and noise around him. And the question is, if there was 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more players that were of, there's really no Messi caliber, but if they were top end type players, would that shift the league? And if we did that, would fan growth be there? Would eyeballs be there? And what's the cost to do something like that? So those are all, massive questions that we're all trying to think through and decide what is the right ingredients to take us to the next level in terms of fan growth.
Right. Because Messi, lifted everybody, right? The whole league.
Yeah.
But there's only so many of him to go around.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things, at least in the United States, it's maybe a little bit different. If you probably can name a bunch of American football players that are stars that you'd like to watch, or American basketball players that are stars you'd like to watch. I think in the sport of soccer, at least in America, there's not tons of these types of players that you'd go, ooh, I'd go to watch that. I want to see that player. So that's a little bit of the rub that we're trying to figure out is because you can spend a lot of money in soccer very, very quickly, very easily. You're competing on a global stage. So acquiring players can really get costly quickly. And how many of the players really have that Q rating that people go, ooh, I want to watch him. I want to be there.
Buy his jersey and yeah, exactly. The other thing too, I'm curious to know is what's the normal, for those not familiar, how long does the season run from when to when?
So right now our season starts in training camp. We'll go to, in our case, we go down to Clearwater, Florida, and we'll do training camp preseason there. And then our first games are right at the end of February. And then they'll run through, we're in the middle of playoffs, right now. And so that's another big, piece. There was an article that just came out a week or two ago about should we stay on the current calendar, which we'll call the annual calendar, or should we switch to the FIFA calendar, which is what the rest of the, soccer world plays on as a FIFA calendar. The challenge for us is, weather, playing certain parts of the United States get pretty cold during the winter. So staying on a FIFA calendar can be a little bit tricky for everybody. But, I think it's fair to say that we are trying to figure this out, analyze it. One of the things I think for us is, can we get our playoffs to pop? If you look at every sports league in America, when it comes to playoffs, the playoffs pop, the playoff ratings grow, fans are more intrigued. So hockey is an interesting one because I think during the year, the TV ratings for hockey are decent, but really what happens when they get to the playoffs, then it seems like there's a lot more eyeballs on it. People are more in tune to it. So that's really the question for us is, can we get a pop out of the playoffs? And what does that then look like? When does it take place on the calendar cycle? How many games? What's the format, et cetera? Because I do think, that's a great way to capture more fans. Casual fans start to come out during playoffs.
Oh, I think that's true for any sport, obviously.
Correct.
Yeah. And the other reason I was asking Tim about the schedule is you go start in February and you're still going in November. You're overlapping, in February, it's still basketball and hockey season. Then the summer's baseball. Then you're back into football again, right? In September. That's a lot, those entertainment, quote unquote, dollars or sports dollars that you're competing against in a big city like Philly.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? We literally at some point in our season, you could argue, go up against every other sports league in America. So definitely challenging. And we're looking at it to try and figure out if there's different approaches that would make more sense.
Well, as one who's been to many games, the in-game experience is phenomenal. I give you massive props for that. And I've told you that before. And that's the customer experience, which is always hot for any CMO in any industry. So the customer experience is phenomenal. The difference, though, in the sports world, as you alluded to earlier, is how good is the team, right? Which you obviously and the CMO can't control that per se.
No, I think you'll see it. A lot of the team presidents are trying to, they're diving in on some way, shape, or form on the soccer side to be as helpful and resourceful as they can to the sports side of the house to make sure that they have resources to think through strategies. In our case, we have a first team, we have a second team, which is kind of like thinking in baseball, like you have a minor league team, if you think of it that way. And then we have a bunch of academy teams. We have, call it 7, 8, 9, depending on the year, academy teams. So you'll see a lot of the times that the team presidents are very joined hip to hip on the economics of all those different teams that I just mentioned. And, we're not necessarily, ever going to go in and say, hey, play this guy at left back or hire, buy this player out of this league or something like that. But we do try and create a good discussion around strategy and what's going to help us to win.
Yeah, because, I remember I interviewed Dustin Godsey, who's a Philly guy. He's the CMO of the Milwaukee Bucks. And it was the year they won. He was very open saying, yeah, it's a lot easier to market a winning team.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, there's, in the history of sports, there's been, a lot of people that have on the business side that have been in fortuitous positions where their team, won or their team got a huge, awesome player and it made their business side look great. So, I always say that on the business side, there's a range, so to speak, of which you trade. You have a high and a low. And our goal on the business side is take that range and lift everything, just shift the entire thing up, right? So the low is not as low and the high is higher. Like that's the goal for what we need to do is kind of outperform the index. Think of it that way. And so regardless of what's happening, right? If our team's performing well, our team's not performing well, you're right. There's an index to what we we'd be as the business side performing at, and our job is to make it perform better.
It's almost like in term of like, in a way, stay with me here if this analogy isn't right, but it's almost like you look at it as being recession proof. When a company's going good or bad, it doesn't matter. You're still at that same.
Yeah. I mean, that
makes sense.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah. I understand what you're saying. Look, it's just, again, like if you would say, go look at teams who performed at X level on the court, on the field, on the ice. And, if the standard answer is those that performed under these circumstances, I'm making this up, lost 6,000 season ticket holders because the team didn't perform well. Well, then your job, should be only lose 3,000, right? Mm-hmm. Or said more positively, for teams who performed well, if the average was to put on, 3,000 new season ticket holders, well, did you put on 6,000 new season ticket holders, right? So just kind of look at it that way. It's just always kind of shifting the band up.
Right. Exactly. I got you. Okay. This is new what I'm about to get to. I didn't have this part of my show when I interviewed you before. I got lost in technical issues, but there's a new part of my show, and it's to get to know my guests on a personal level.
All right.
I call it the random five. There's no gotcha questions, but I just pull out these 5 random questions and I ask my guests. Very, very random. So if you're game, here we go.
Okay.
What superpower do you wish you had?
Oh, wow. Let's see our random questions. Maybe can I teleport in time somehow? That would be pretty cool.
Okay. Hey, look.
I don't know.
Well, actually, it could tie into this next question.
Okay.
If you could have dinner with any historical figure, living or dead, who would it be and why? So you could teleport if it's someone dead. There you go.
Historical figure, you said, right?
Any. It doesn't have to be historical. Could be a relative or.
Okay. Well, relative wise, I would certainly pick my grandfather, my grandfather. From a historical perspective, the first person that kind of popped in my head was Abe Lincoln. So I think I stick with those.
But you mentioned your grandparents. What was it about them?
Just a special relationship with them. They lived in Iowa. I lived in out here in Philadelphia. So every year we would make a trek back. My mom is from Iowa. I was born in Nebraska. So it was always a good kind of, for me, growing up, seeing what it's like to live in the Midwest. And, their town is a small rural town of, 4,000 people. So just seeing those differences really always helped shape my kind of perspective. It's not about what clothes you wear. It's not about what type of car you drive. It's about family. And just, I always kind of appreciated that, that lifestyle, that just a different perspective, I think I'd say.
Interesting. Okay. Your morning routine. When Tim McDermott gets up, is he checking his phone, social, email, news, none of the above?
First, yes. The answer is yes. Probably all of the above. The alarm goes off, and it's probably a bad habit, quite frankly, is the first thing you do is shut the alarm off on my phone. And then, before I even get a foot on the floor, I'm looking at, email, text, you name it. So yes, I don't know if that's good, but that's how I start my day. Just right there.
It's not right or wrong. No, it's your routine. Everybody's different. Everybody's different. Okay. Pop culture, which I love. Is there a book, movie, or song that has deeply influenced you?
The book is Where the Red Fern Grows.
Okay. Why? Tell us about that one. Why did that?
No, I as a little, as a young kid, read that.
Okay.
Just the bond of a boy with his dog and hunting and all that. I just I always thought that was pretty special and I remember reading that book with my son many years ago. So I just thought that was special. And then movie is A River Runs Through It. So I'm a big avid fly fisherman. Just the connection to kind of water and fly fishing. And I think anybody who's a big fly fisherman probably can appreciate what I'm saying. There's just something very unique and special about the nature and kind of the science and art and sport of fly fishing all combined. And that's always been probably my favorite movie.
I don't think I knew that about you as many times as we've spoken. Probably because I don't think of Philly and fly fishing.
Yeah, it's probably about an hour away. You can do some, and you got to get to State College in Penn State area. You get some really good fly fishing.
Yeah, exactly. Not much happening in Chester or Center City. Yeah.
Not so much.
Not too much. All right, last question. Who has been the most influential person in your life, and what did you learn from them?
Well, definitely my mom and dad. So I can't say one, I'd say both.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, definitely my mom and dad. I mean, I grew up in an amazing environment of just, sacrifice, hard work, everything being geared towards trying to give a better lifestyle for their kids, myself, my brother, and what it looks like to make, what hard work really looks like. And I very early on saw that, was exposed to what it looks like watching my dad and mom, work multiple jobs during the week. Their primary job and their secondary job. And sometimes my dad would have three jobs in 1 week just to, make ends meet. And, you see what that looks like. And so I grew up in an environment where that was a big piece of our DNA, tough love type environment, where we were always, there was strong discipline and it was tough, but at the same time, they were always there to, support, love, and would make any sacrifice, in the world for us. So that was the environment I grew up in. And I think hopefully what I've carried forth to today and the way I'm hopefully I'm doing the same thing for my kids.
I'm sure you are. I'm sure you probably take for granted like any parent. So I'm sure you do. Knowing you as I do, I have no doubt. Well, listen, we're up against it. Always great to see you, brother. Always great to talk to you. It's going to be a great episode. And then thank you.
Awesome, Steve. Great seeing you. Great talking to you. Thank you for having me.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the CMO Whisperer Show. I hope you shared this episode with your friends. And if you have not already, please subscribe to be kept up to date on all the latest episodes. And if you're so inclined, leave me a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you.